Tinkaton is one of those Pokemon that was designed to attack in one way and one way only, and that's obviously to bonk people with its massive ass hammer. I mean, they straight up gave this thing an overpowered exclusive move in Gigaton Hammer, but I'm gonna use it in a way that probably nobody has before. When you take a look at this thing's stats, it really has no offensive power at all. Its 75 attack is carried by the fact that it can still hit hard with Gigaton Hammer regardless. But while everybody expects physical Tinkaton, I'm gonna pull out the forbidden special attacker and go into battle straight up hammerless. Will it be good? Definitely not. But nobody will see it coming, so I guess we've kinda got that going for us. I'm gonna first go for a flatter, which raises the target's special attack by 1 and confuses it. This then activates our mirror herb, and we're able to steal the boost. It would be nice if flatter boosted their special attack by 2 like Swagger does, but I mean, I guess we just gotta take what we can get. We're now gonna fire off Stab Draining Kiss, which at least allows us to heal up and stay alive. Plus it has the benefit of being pretty bulky on the special side anyway. It's also kind of cool that now if the opponent touches us, this activates our Pickpocket ability and then we can steal their item. We've then got Stab Flash Cannon, which can do its best to hit hard, along with coverage and Terra Blast Ground for some surprise hits. I mostly just think it's hilarious to use Tinkaton without its hammer, but I think it could be a fun challenge to see if we can get it to do anything on the special side of things. So today we ask the bold question, what if Tinkaton, but worse? Game Freak was kind enough to give this thing a straight up weapon with a massive steel hammer, but we're gonna use it without it because, I don't know, it just it mostly just seemed kind of funny at the time, and it's an interesting challenge. Look, if that sounds at all like an interesting time to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm always messing around with random shenanigans over here, and we have a fun time doing it. Now with that, let's go ahead and just jump into the match. All right, so from turn 1, look, I'm gonna get crazy here and make a little prediction, start the game off with crazy momentum. I decide to expect them to lead off with a Great Tusk, and for that reason, I lead off with Paul. Instead, however, I am met with just about the worst possible option in Dragapult. So, you know, Slowbro's hippo ass has absolutely no business staying in here and just dying to a Shadow Ball, so I have to switch. I decide to go into the Tink, just in case they want a Draco Meteor. I don't know. It's most likely they do go for that U-turn. That is what they click. And now they can even get a matchup on the Tinkaton. So, you know, the early game momentum is certainly not on our side. Now, this is going to allow them to pivot into the Great Tusk. A far worse matchup than if I had Slowbro out here. However, I'm going to get a little crazy once again. I decided to just go for the flatter. Reason for that is, first of all, I know that I'm faster. I'm going to be able to get that confusion, which always just gives it a chance to, you know, hit itself on this turn. I then activate that Mirror Herb. And not only is Buddy's Great Tusk confused, but the trainer is probably also confused as hell, thinking, what is this Tinkaton doing to me? So I figure the reason why it was safe is because even if they do get an attack off, it's just going to be the Stealth Rock, right? They do set up the Stealth Rock, and that honestly puts me in a pretty good spot here, because now I have that +1 to my special attack. A Draining Kiss will hurt. If they want to risk staying in and going for an Earthquake to get through that confusion, I'm just going to let it happen. Now, it turns out, though, they are going to switch out, and they go into a Slowbro of their own. So this is a big tubby boy who, you know, is, first of all, probably enjoys the kiss on the tummy, but also it's not going to hurt that much. I mean, at +1 special attack, not only does it not really hurt, I also the most painful kiss on a Rocky helmet. I take some chip from that. I decide, you know what, this is fine. What is this thing really going to do to me? I'm just going to proceed to Draining Kiss. Even though I take Rocky helmet, it kind of negates it with the healing I get back. Plus, I mean, I have good natural special bulk. I can take attacks all day long. So it turns out as they end up going for the Chilling Water, that's kind of great to see. That tells me that's probably their best way to hit this thing in a neutral way. So I'm like, dude, we obviously don't care about the attack drop, and it's just weaker than like a Scald. So we take that fine, and I'm just going to continue to just fire off smooches out here. There's really no reason not to. Now, they're going to end up switching back into the Great Tusk, who first of all does live the Draining Kiss, which is kind of depressing. I mean, this thing's not really built to do very much damage. It's annoying that Flatter is just a worse Swagger. Why not allow us to get +2? The +1 is not enough. Anyway, though, it's actually still fine because I can just outspeed this thing. Even with this heavy-ass useless hammer, we're dragging this shit around being, you know, still pretty quick with it. So I just decided to go for another one. And I kind of see what they're working toward here. They go back into the Slowbro. Bad thing about Slowbro's ass pivoting around is that this thing with the Regenerator is able to come back healthy. It's getting, you know, a considerable chunk back every time it switches back in. But once again, I'm definitely not going anywhere. I'm going to proceed to throw Hammer Kisses at Buddy just to just to slowly whittle things down. Obviously, it's not going to be enough to knock this thing out, but I mean, I'm slowly whittling things, and you know, I'm having a decent time staying out here, considering they just go for another Chilling Water. Doesn't really do a whole lot. I just go for another Draining Kiss. If they want the Slowbro to go down, that's actually fine. That's a pretty big defensive switch in out of the way. Turns out probably they do just switch out and get that regenerator. Kind of as expected, but as they bring in the King Gambit, I'm like, dude, I'm actually applying some crazy pressure with a special attacking Tinkaton here for by some miracle of God here. So look, here's the thing. It doesn't do very much with a Draining Kiss. This thing is going to reveal its leftovers, and I've got myself a good old-fashioned decision to make. First of all, I mean, King Gambit can like Iron Head. I'm not really sure exactly what this thing wants to click. All I know is a physical attack is going to relatively hurt. So what I decide is, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and bust out the Terra Ground. We put the straight up Earth on the dome, and with that is kind of our answer to opposing steel types. Now, there is a few problems with going for this Terra Ground. First of all, it does leave me vulnerable now to the Slowbro's Water Stab, but I figure, look, if there's any opportunity I can get to just knock out a King Gambit, I will be taking that 100% of the time. So I'm able to then Terra Blast the thing. Down goes the Gambit, one of the scariest mons to deal with, especially late game. And Tinkaton is slowly but surely just being a little menace over here. So, of course, now they do go back into the Slowbro. Good thing is, though, even with a weak attack, I should be able to take one Chilling Water, plus a Terra Blast Ground. It does hit harder than a Draining Kiss. Well, I don't get the health back. I'm just going for damage. Now, here's the thing. They end up swapping into the Great Tusk. They more than likely expected me to switch out there, but look, I have this +1 to my special attack. I am not letting it go to waste. So I fire some Earth out of the hammer. Down goes the Great Tusk, and that is, I've knocked out a King Gambit and a Great Tusk at this point, and honestly, that feels like a pretty big dub. So now they decide actually to end up going into the Goodra. The Thickdra is going to be able to take an attack, obviously on the special side, especially if it's Assault Vested. Now, I go for that Draining Kiss. That gets a critical hit. And that leads me to believe, yeah, you know, Homegirl is probably wearing a vest, and that's just going to make her even thicker than usual. Plus, it does have Scald, and while that doesn't quite knock me to half, I figure I might as well just try to make a move here, conserve the thing. I should still be able to maybe get some use out of the Tinkaton, even without the flatter boost, but it's fine. I realize one thing I can do is bring in Mabostiff. Now, Mabostiff does run into the problem of if I get a Scald burn here, that is unfortunate, but Mabostiff hard switch in here is great because, first of all, it doesn't burn me. So hot water, not that hot, but also now I can pressure this thing with a Play Rough, but also if they want to switch out, they're going to take a Stakeout boosted attack. So they actually end up staying in. The Play Rough is going to knock out the Goodra, and that's, you know, a pretty big also defensive threat out of the way. So one thing they do not know is that Mabostiff is Choice Scarfed, and as they bring in the Dragapult, I am pretty free to just go ahead and outspeed with a Play Rough. I do luckily connect. Problem is, Ghostly Tail over here is thick enough to live one, and that, of course, Dragapult's the kind of guy that can always just at least take one, especially as a non-stab, random-ass early route dog. So, yeah, that allows him to finish me off with a U-turn. Great news is, though, look, I take out the Goodra and I knock the Dragapult into range to easily be dealt with later. So that feels like pretty good value. Plus, the boys in the back are feeling pretty healthy. So as they end up knocking me out with the U-turn, that's great. I get to see what they want to pivot into and then decide a matchup. Now, I decided to bring in the Sandy Shocks, and this feels like a pretty decent answer to the Jolteon. The only thing I'm worried about here would be a Terra on their end, and if they've got it, they're probably going to use it in this situation. Now, the good thing is, though, I have my booster energy, so I'm going to be able to outspeed. I got that speed boost, and as I click the Earth Power, yep, they do go for the Terra, and worst case scenario does turn out to be Terra Grass. Most of the time, you see, I'm always just worried about a Terra Ice, but no, this one's got the Flower, and that is especially bad because now it's going to resist my Earth Power. Not going to do a damn thing to the Flower Pot Pointy Boy, and now it is going to also have that Terra Blast, and sadly, Jolteon strong, and Terra Blast is going to be able to knock me out. It's a good Terra on their end. Down goes the Sandy Shocks, who was feeling pretty solid for the remainder of this, because now I don't really have the best answer to their Slowbro other than my Decidueye. So I'm like, you know what? Actually, Decidueye kind of walls the thing here. I can bring this in, and especially since I saw that it's not Terra Ice, which I was worried about, they don't have any way to really hit me with like a neutral attack, and that feels pretty good, other than, I guess, Alluring Voice. But I'm just going to go ahead and just start mashing some damage with the Decidueye anyway. Now, they can go into their defensive wall-ass Slowbro here, who does take a triple arrows nicely. Bad thing is for them, though, that's going to get the defense drop. And this is kind of an interesting matchup, right? If this thing gets off a Psychic, it's going to hurt. But with that -1 to defense, I can then go for that Leaf Blade, and that is going to be able to knock it out. So that is actually incredibly clutch. This Decidueye randomly finds itself in spots that are really great, because now look at, they go into the Dragapult, they're down to 2 mons left. It's going to be the Pult along with the Jolteon. Boom, I surprise him with the little leg kick Shadow Sneak, and this big ass Talons over here are going to be able to rip that thing apart. So luckily we got the amount of chip we did on the thing to allow that Shadow Sneak to knock it out. shout out to the priority. And now their final mon is going to be that Jolteon, who, again, doesn't have, at least to my knowledge, anything that really can knock me out at this range. They do just go for the Shadow Ball as their best way to, I guess, hit me neutrally. Not going to do much. We do get the Spadef drop, which shouldn't matter, at least, because even if I don't get the knockout with the triple arrows here, which it does, I then could just have the priority Shadow Sneak, and that is going to be the end of the game on that one. So that was an interesting match with some pretty big threats that we got some pretty good advantage early to take care of, and that was a fun one. We were able to at least stir things up a little bit with the Tinkaton, and that's the goal out here. So, well, that was pretty fun. That's now going to bring us into game number 2, because we're having a fun time with a random-ass team, and just mostly seeing what we can do with it. Look, if you've stuck around this far into the video, as always, make sure you hit that like button. Some of you probably have, but most probably haven't, because I pretty much forget to hit it every time I'm watching a video too, but it does help out creators, and I don't know, just smash the button. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the next match against a pretty wild looking team. All right, so this time my helmeted friend here is going to end up leading off with a Quillfish. Now, this little cross-eyed bastard was not the fella I expected to see, because I end up leading off with the Decidueye. Now, the reason for that is because from the team preview, we see the Palafin, right? I'm thinking if most of the time people have a Palafin, they lead with it. They want to go for a flip turn and just be able to get off that thing's ability. Then the second time it switches in. But I thought I would maybe be able to capitalize on that, set up an early Swords Dance. It turns out, though, as I'm looking at a Quillfish lead, I'm like, you know what? This is relatively similar. If it's a lead Quillfish, it's probably going to click Spikes. It turns out instead, though, it went for a Toxic, which is still kind of fine. I do get up a free Swords Dance, which always feels good. And now they decide to go for the Taunt, which is fine. They don't want me setting up any more Swords Dances, but luckily for me, on this turn, I just go for the Leaf Blade. And I've heard it's a difficult thing to, like, slice up and eat pufferfish, but, you know, Decidueye's been doing this for years, baby. We go for that Leaf Blade. Doesn't quite have enough to knock it out. At this point, though, I figured maybe they just leave it in and try to get off like a Destiny Bond potentially, or just go for layer spikes. And for that reason, I click the Shadow Sneak. But instead, they decide to switch into freaking Low Kicks, who absolutely always bust my balls. Low Kicks is such a problem. Now, the Shadow Sneak does not do much with the resisted hit. If I went for the triple arrows there, that would have been sick as hell. But instead, now I'm met with the opportunity to where I'm like, this thing probably just goes for a first impression, but they actually end up clicking the U-turn there. So I don't know exactly what this Low Kicks is working with, if it's choiced in some way, but I do live. So I'm thinking it's probably not choice banded. And now as they end up going into the Sinistra, look at this. I go for the triple arrows. They probably bring in the Ghost type just to, you know, trying to predict that fighting move. But most people forget that Decidueye has the Scrappy ability, allowing me to touch Ghost types with the fighting moves. That feels pretty sweet. And now as I figure they probably fear the Shadow Sneak, I'm going to end up just clicking the triple arrows again, expecting a switch. But as they just go for the Calm Mind instead, that ends up working out just fine, because while I'm hanging on by a damn thread over here due to that poison, they just Calm Mind. I am able to get off another triple arrows, and that's going to take care of the Sinistra. So the bad thing is I do obviously just go down to my Toxic now, but it feels pretty good that at least the Decidueye was able to do kind of still what it was meant to do as a lead anyway. I was able to at least break through a little something. I got some damage on the Quillfish. I took care of the Sinistra, which is good. And now we have an empty battlefield situation, which is always a fun one. Now, I expect them to go Low Kicks. This thing with the ability to pressure with first impression, especially without any stealth rock up, this thing can come in for free. So I'm thinking surely Low Kicks. It does turn out to be the thing, and this is an interesting matchup. First of all, it probably doesn't quite want to stay in here. I'm thinking most likely U-turn, and I'm like, do I even go for the flatter? I might as well, right? I go for it because, first of all, here's the thing. I end up outspeeding. Tinkaton is randomly fast as hell with a heavy-ass hammer. And that's really good that I'm able to get that off first, because it's able to get off its confusion before it's able to attack. I get that Mirror Herb, most importantly, but now we have the nice little chance for this thing to not even be able to get its U-turn off, which is always great. Now, I'm like, come on, duckies, do your job. And it does. It does hit itself in confusion, get itself a little bit of chip, but now they're in a spot where they can't really afford to stay in and go for a U-turn, or else you just die. And they're also probably just confused as hell. They end up staying in. I'm able to get off a Draining Kiss, nothing like a little hammer smooch, and that's going to knock out the Low Kicks, which honestly, Low Kicks on a team is something that I'm always incredibly afraid of. The hard-hitting priority is just so valuable on that thing, it's actually crazy. So that takes care of it, and that's really nice. Now, what's not really nice is the absolute momentum killer of a Skeledirge. This thing is always going to be unaware, and just always ruins my day when it comes to setup. But at least what I can do is, even though I'm not going to be able to use my +1 special attack because of this asshole's ability, I can go for the Terra Ground, and that's going to first allow me to get some pretty decent damage with the Terra Blast. I would have liked if this thing came in on some Stealth Rock, but at least, you know, I can get some super effective damage there. It's going to do almost half, which is nice, and Now as they go for the Torch Song, I'm able to take that much better, now not being part Steel type. It is going to do a decent little chunk there, but that's fine. I'm just going to continue to Terra Blast here. I might as well just get as much damage on the Skeledirge as I can, because once again, this thing just blocks all setup, and it starts to get a little out of control if you let it Torch Song too many times. Buddy gets its confidence up with its shitty song and just, it spirals out of control. So here's the thing, they end up going for the Terra of their own. It's going to be the Terra Fairy, which is just going to allow it to take a Terra Blast a bit better, not super effective, but as I know I can live one more attack, they end up clicking the Will-O-Wisp, which Willow misses. So I don't know if they just forgot that I'm a special attacking Tinkaton, but that's the type of shit we like to stir up with random mons clicking moves they have no business doing, because check it out, now I can go for the Flash Cannon, and that's a super effective hit, gonna be able to take care of the Skeledirge, and that fella has been bamboozled by the Tink. They probably forgot that it was like a flatter set and not like a swagger mirror herb, and that is hilarious. So that's a free knockout on not only the Skeledirge, but also takes its Terra with it, which is fantastic. Bad thing is, now that I'm weak to water, they go into the freaking Palafin here, but a Jet Punch is not quite gonna be able to knock us out. It does allow me to get off a Draining Kiss there, which, is not gonna do much, but at least, hey, that's free damage and free real estate, so we'll take it. And as much as I would like to get more value out of this Tinkaton with our boost, I'm kind of forced to swap this thing out. And the good news is, at least since this is a regular non-superhero ass Palafin, I can go into Slowbro here. I know that if it has, something like a knockoff or whatever, it would suck. But I mean, in general, the Hippo is not afraid. So I bring in the Slowbro here. I just decided to click a Scald because I'm like, I don't know if this thing is choiced or if it's going to stay in or what it's going to really do. But one thing, I mean, you never have a bad time clicking Scald. Let's get that straight. A chance for a burn is always nice. But they also gift wrap us a nice little knockout here. They go into the Gliscor, and that is, I don't know what Buddy's cooking on that switch in, but a Scald is going to roast and toast the thing. You don't even have to click an Ice Beam. That's going to knock it out. And they just get the Death Fodder Gliscor is a fantastic gift. I did not have to deal with the Gliscor today. That feels pretty good. So they are now down to 2 mons left. It's going to be the Quillfish along with the Palafin. And as I'm looking at it here, I don't really need to leave Slowbro in. One thing is I need to conserve the Slowbro to be my best answer to that Palafin, right? And I'm thinking maybe there's a chance they even just click Toxic here. I decided to switch back into the Tinkaton, and look at this. They do go for the Toxic. That's kind of expected on the Slowbro here. But now that's fantastic for Tinkaton because I am going to be faster than the Quillfish here. And I also have the super effective Terra Blast to just finish this thing off. And you may have thought that Tinkaton was Tinkadon, but you would be incorrect on that. I can then outspeed. A Terra Blast is going to finish off the Quillfish, and we grab one last little knockout for the road. And that is quite satisfying. So now all we have to do is just get through this Palafin. And luckily, since I have the Slowbro at full health, mind you, considering I switched out and back in with the Regenerator, we're feeling nice and healthy and regenerated. But Palafin is still scary. The thing's at full health. It's going to come back as a damn superhero. And now this thing's stats are all crazy, and he looks like that. It underwent a nice little transformation. So I'm basically forced to just leave the Tinkaton in here. I try to get off a Draining Kiss, but Buddy's got jet hands, and that's gonna finish me off. So down goes the Tink, but not before we were able to absolutely wreak a little bit of havoc on the match. And the only thing I can really do is go into Slowbro. As much as I would like to go into Sandy Shocks, that Jet Punch is just gonna hurt. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Consider Slowbro is kind of my only thing I have to stop this thing from ruining this late game. So I go into the Paul here, and we're just having a nice little time, not knowing what the hell's going on. But we do know we're clicking Psychic. Now, they do just end up going for a Zen Headbutt, which is funny because it does get the flinch. They probably are like, hey, if I get like 20 more flinches, we could get through it. But they just go for a Jet Punch here, which is going to slowly whittle us down. And as a Psychic is not quite going to be able to do it with just one of them here because Palafin's thick as hell. One more should be able to do it as long as I don't get all the flinches, but they're just going to go for one more Water Stab. We're able to clutch it out there. A Psychic is going to do it. Down goes the Palafin, and that's going to be a big dub. In a match where Tinkaton, special attacking Tinkaton, gets any knockouts, that's just a win in general. So we will absolutely take it. And Slowbro is able to get the glory of the final pick off there. And that's going to do it for game number 2, but that's going to now bring us into the next one. And this is a very interesting match where things get a little bit scary in this one. And honestly, a team like this, I'm more afraid of. But he's got some crazy stuff over here, and I'm like, what is this man cooking? It's got to be up to no good, and I am kind of afraid. But, I have a special attacking Tinkaton, so am I really that afraid? Hell no. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so keeping with today's theme, I decided to go ahead and make a lead prediction once again. As I lead off with the Oink alone, I'm thinking they're surely going to go with the Vikavolt and get up Sticky Web. That's what everybody's in this situation is going to do, right? Nope, they end up leading off with the Sandaconda, and I'm 0 for 3 on trying to get an early matchup here. But I'm like, you know what? The pig is all the way out here. I might as well click the Stuffed Cheeks. This is an absolutely nonsensical, kind of fun set. If you haven't seen the Oinkalone video, someone said it was pronounced Oinkalone, like baloney, and I will not be saying it that way. But I go for the Stuffed Cheeks. That is great because it gives me +2 to defense, gets my Salic Berry boost. Sadly, however, I get freaking glared. And, you know, Sandaconda is always doing that. Just stares you down with his weird shotgun nostrils, and that is enough to scare the shit out of you and put you in a wheelchair. So I'm not paralyzed. I do at least go for the Thief, which is funny because now I take the thing's leftovers from it. And this Oinkalone is mostly just here for the memes and also just to be a dick. So I get that thing's leftovers out of the way. And as they do click the Earthquake there, that's not going to do much. Look, my defenses are doubled and I'm a thick-ass pig. And, you know, if you think you're going to do much damage to the bacon that way, no, that is not the case. You're going to have to hit me on the special side. So at this point, I'm just going to go for a Body Slam, start firing off some damage here. And the Pretzel Snake realizes it's in a bad matchup here. So I just go for the Earth. As I go for the Body Slam, in comes the Vikavolt, which is fine. They do realize they have to hit me on the special side. I do almost half with that Body Slam, which would have been quite satisfying. And as much as this thing probably wants to get up a Sticky Web, it's still going to have to get through the pig. So I'm like, do they just go for damage? This thing could be specs. You just never really know. If they don't lead with it, kind of makes me feel like it's not going to be a Sticky Web lead. But it turns out it is just going to Sticky Web. Important note, I do outspeed even Paralyzed because Vikavolt is about slow as hell for some reason. I do have a fun video on this thing using agility. You should go check out the agility Vikavolt video. I'm mostly afraid of people clicking that, but now I know that it's in range for one more Body Slam to knock it out. So while they do get up their Sticky Web, which is wildly unfortunate for, you know, everything else on my team, considering I do not have a hazard removal, at least I'm able to grab a knockout with the pig. And I'm like, look, anytime where Oinkalone can A, get off of Stuffed Cheeks, steal an item, and get a kill, this thing's having a fun time. So, you know, we absolutely take it. Now, they're going to go into their next special attacker being the Dragalge, who is going to be able to hit hard with something like a Draco Meteor. I do end up being faster still, but I get fully paralyzed because freaking, of course I do. And as they go for that Draco Meteor, it doesn't quite knock me out though, because this thing's HP is actually pretty damn clutch. And, you know, that's going to give us a little more life. Now, I love to see a situation here where I can essentially just sack the Oinkalone. I would love to get off some damage before I go down. I have the chance for a Body Slam Para as well. I break through, but most importantly, them just clicking Draco Meteors just allows me a great position to set up in front of this thing once I go down. Now, I do get the Para also, and that's a successful day for the Oinkalone. And, you know, that's fine. We get some big old chip there. We get the Para. This thing goes for another Draco Meteor, so it's sitting at -4 special attack. And if there's ever been a mon to set up in front of, it's a paralyzed Dragapult who now can't really Draco Meteor its way out of a wet paper bag. So this feels like the best opportunity I'm going to get for Tinkaton here. It is kind of forced to switch out here. I mean, there's nothing they can really do in terms of staying in. So as I come in, sadly, I do get caught up in the Sticky Web, and that sucks because this thing does really rely on its natural speed a lot of the time, but I'm still relatively quick and it's fine. I go for the Flatter as they stay in. I was very surprised that they stay in here, and that only means they probably just click flip turn, right? But they're going to have to break through the confusion and the Para to be able to get that off. So I'm like, hey, there's a pretty good chance that I get this for free. Now I go ahead and copy that stat change. They are confused. I'm like, hit yourself, buddy. Do it. You won't. And it doesn't. It does also not get paralyzed. It's able to go for a flip turn and pivot into something much more useful. Now, here's the fun part, though. Since they made physical contact, I go ahead and steal the leftovers out of its freaking pocket. I get that pickpocket off, and that's pretty good. I get an item that I can actually use. And sometimes, as much as I forget that I have pickpocket, that actually works out for me nicely. So I steal the thing's leftovers, and as they end up bringing in the Delphox here, that's kind of fine. I'm feeling healthy. I should be able to take an attack from it, especially if I go for this Terra Ground and get off a Terra Blast. I'm like, dude, even if, you know, all I do is get a knockout on this Delphox, that's a pretty good day for the Tinkaton. I go for that Terra Ground, and, you know, Delphox is fast, and I am caught up in a damn Sticky Web over here, but I've got a sweet Bowl Cut now, and as they do just go for the Flamethrower, I take that nicely. The built-in special defense on this thing is clutch as hell. And I also get off this Terra Blast or straight out of the hammer. That is gonna, I'm like thinking maybe it's enough. It is enough to knock out the Delphox. And that's pretty damn satisfying. That's a fast special sweeper out of the way, and no foxy shenanigans for you, my friend. And also, as I eat some leftovers, I'm like kind of healthy on the thing. Now, as I go for that Terra Ground, it does switch things up a bit in terms of now, you know, they have freaking Bramblegast, who, First did not have a great matchup against me, now does. I'm thinking Power Whip just is going to obliterate me, and especially since I'm caught up in a Sticky Web, I am just going to go down there. So I don't have much of a reason to just leave that thing in, and I also am thinking, dude, Decidueye kind of defensively has a good matchup here. I do come in, get caught up in Sticky Web, it's fine. This thing's not built to be fast anyway, but if I come into a Power Whip, that's nice. Bad thing is, they end up going for the Poltergeist. Smack me in the face with my spell tag, and that does 93 damage. And that wildly sucks because at 90 HP, I'm like, unless that was max damage, I don't live this next one. And I click the triple arrows here, thinking if I can get a triple arrows off, it's going to do just enough to allow me to deal with this thing. And as they end up going for the Terra Normal, I'm like, oh, dude, this is perfect. If I live this attack and get off this triple arrows, I'm going to be so happy that that thing went for the Terra Normal. But as they Poltergeist once more, it is enough to just knock me out, and that is kind of double bad, because now with this thing being normal type, I already didn't really have a great matchup against it, but now with it being normal, I now no longer have the ability to get the super effective crunch off with my freaking Mabosstiff, which was really my only answer to the thing. At least I can bring in Mabosstiff here, and honestly, my plan at this point is to just whittle this thing down. There is one bad scenario that this thing could put me through, but I'm not going to quite say it yet. I go for the crunch. Gonna do some nice damage there. I mean, some chip for the road would have been much better if you were still freaking ghost type. But as they set up some spikes, I'm like, that's fine. That allows me just another crunch here. And I don't know exactly what this thing's other damaging move is, but I go for the extra crunch. I do get the defense drop, which feels pretty good. However, they click the strength sap. And that is exactly the move that I did not want to see out of this tumbleweed guy. That thing, Strength Sap might just be the most broken move in the game. Not only does it drop my attack one stage, but it heals it all the way to full. And I really, in a game where I was like, all I need to do, get some chip on the thing, be able to pick it off with something later, that's fine. Nope, now it's bad news because I can't really afford to stay in with the Mabosstiff. I decided to end up switching into the Tinkaton, who feels like this is mostly just kind of a sack switch in here. I do get hurt by some spikes, which sucks now. As they go for another strength sap. At least the good news is, hey, Tinkaton doesn't give a damn about its physical attack, being, you know, the only special attacking Tinkaton in the world. But especially since the freaking webs are up, this thing is faster, and I just need to get, I need to get a spot against this. Now, I'm starting to realize, as they go for a Poltergeist here again, does smash me with my leftovers. That's going to be able to knock me out, but we haven't seen, you know, what this thing wants to do in terms of grass damage. And my only way I can really deal with this is to kind of give up a couple of mons here. I feel like my best option is to go, or only option here is to go into the Sandy Shocks. And well, at least I can hit it with a neutral Earth Power or Thunderbolt here. Here's the funny part. This is a really interesting interaction. The Sticky Web is going to activate first. That drops my speed by one stage, and then I get hurt by spikes. But more importantly, now I get my booster energy off. Now, here's the thing. Photosynthesis activated after the Sticky Web came through. So since my speed was lower, that instead boosts my special attack, which is interesting. But now they end up going for the Poltergeist, and since I used up my item, I can't do it. They do not seem to have the grass coverage, and that allows me a free Thunderbolt. And I get the para. So that was a wild turn there. Now with this thing paralyzed, I will be faster. And I'm like, dude, that was so clutch that they did not click something like a Power Whip there. And that is amazing. Now I can go for an Earth Power. That's going to finish off the Brambleghast. And I was like, dude, I thought I was completely walled and swept at the same time by this damn Tumbleweed. And that about scared the hell out of me. So, you know, hey, we move on. We got through it. And now all I got to do is try to bring this game home. So as they go into Floatzel, here's a recap of the situation. They're down to 3 mons left. They've got the Floatzel. They have the Dragalge along with the Sandaconda. Now, as I end up staying in here, I probably should have just hard switched into the Slowbro. The reason why I did not, though, is because I feel like Slowbro kind of wins this match by itself. I risked the overprediction there, or at least try to hopefully maybe see if they went for an overprediction, but they don't. They just go for that Wave Crash. That's going to take out the Sandy Shocks, which is fine, because now I go into the Slowbro, and I know that this thing doesn't really have much to hit me with. And I also know that like a Psychic probably is in range to knock it out. So I take some spikes. I want to see what they want to do here. And they're kind of just forced to switch. So out goes the Floatzel. Something's going to have to deal with a Psychic. I'm feeling good about Dragalge because I know I have some chip and a para on it. And they do go into the Dragalge here. If it's Assault Vest, still could be kind of bad, but it'd be a 2-hit KO anyway. The Psychic is just going to be enough to take care of it. And that is fantastic. And as they're down to 2 mons left now, they decide now to bring in the Sandaconda, and they probably are realizing they really just need some type of damage on Slowbro to be able to deal with it via Floatzel. So they go for an Earthquake here. They are going to be able to outspeed. That's going to do a nice little chunk, but luckily I can just go ahead and melt this thing with a Scald. overcook the pretzel, and down goes the Sandaconda. So now, final mon is going to be the Floatzel, and freaking Water Wings over here is still feeling kind of scary, but my best way to deal with it is actually to switch the Slowbro out. I want to be able to come back in with the Regenerator because the one-on-one here is basically in my favor, right? So I switch out, and knowing that I have to come back in on spikes anyway, though, is a little bit scary. That I do still end up in the green on the switch in again, though. So I decided to switch into Mabosstiff here, essentially as a sack switch. I could have done two things. Either I stay in there and see what this thing wants to do, or I switched out. But I decided to switch. Mabosstiff comes in. I do just get melted by a Wave Crash, which actually is good because the Wave Crash recoil is going to make this thing just a little bit more in range to hopefully allow me to finish it with a Psychic. Also, if they click the Wave Crash there, that's just their best bet in terms of amount of damage on the Slowbro, so that feels good. Now I come in, what doesn't feel good is that I have to take some pointed stones and some spikes, but after the Regenerator I am still above half, and that feels pretty good because now I can go for that stab Psychic. They do just click the Wave Crash, and it basically all comes down to this turn. It does a nice little chunk, they then take some recoil, and with this thing below half, I'm feeling pretty confident that Slowbro is going to be able to finish it off, and it is just in range for the Psychic to finish it. So the Slowbro is always coming in clutch in these late games. And that's my freaking dude right there. We love Paul. So that's going to be the end of the match on that one. Super interesting game. The Brambleghast things got a little bit crazy, but we were able to come out on top just barely. And that's going to do it for the video. Thank you guys very much for watching. For real, the support on these videos is far more than I could have ever imagined. And I love you all. I will see you next time. Peace out.